Germany has shifted from desperate labor shortages to widespread hiring freezes in record time. You are reading headlines about this reversal and wondering what it means for the global economy. Most analysts call this a cyclical downturn caused by temporary inflation or bad timing. They believe the market will self-correct once prices stabilize. But here is the thing that changes everything. You cannot fix this with standard economic tools because the underlying model has collapsed entirely. By the end of this video, we will see why Germany's social market economy can no longer function as it did for 70 years, and what happens when a nation hits its demographic ceiling while losing its energy advantage simultaneously. For decades, German industrial success rested on three simple pillars: high-skill workers, stable political institutions, and access to extremely cheap natural gas from Russia. This combination allowed manufacturers to pay high wages without raising consumer prices because the cost of production remained low. The system was designed for stability, not shock absorption. When energy costs were near zero relative to other nations, German firms could outcompete everyone by offering quality goods at competitive rates while maintaining full employment and generous social benefits. That era ended abruptly in 2022 when Russian gas flows stopped. The immediate reaction from policymakers was to assume this was a temporary supply shock that would fade within months or years. They expected energy prices to normalize and the labor market to snap back into its familiar rhythm of tightness. However, data collected between 2012 and 2022 tells a different story about how wages and employment actually interact in Germany. A significant study analyzing minimum wage hikes found that when wages rose by 22% from €9.82 to €12, labor demand did not collapse as classical theory predicted. Instead of mass layoffs or total hiring suspensions driven purely by price sensitivity, the market adjusted through a contraction in mini-jobs and reduced working hours. This finding is crucial because it suggests that wage rigidity was never the primary failure point before 2022. The labor market remained functionally tight, even as wages grew between 7% and 19% real terms during high-demand periods. Firms absorbed higher costs through productivity gains or passed them to consumers without breaking their hiring strategies. But this dynamic relied entirely on cheap energy acting as a hidden subsidy for the entire industrial base. When that subsidy vanished, the math stopped working in ways that simple wage adjustments cannot fix. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. Consider what happens when you remove the low-cost input that made high labor costs sustainable. Energy-intensive sectors like chemicals and steel manufacturing suddenly face a cost structure where their primary inputs have doubled or tripled overnight. In response to this shock, firms are not just cutting hours anymore because they can no longer afford to pay anyone at current rates for work that generates insufficient value. The disconnect between the 22% minimum wage hike and actual employment stability reveals the core problem. Wage increases failed to offset the post-2022 energy cost explosion. Companies entered hiring freezes not because workers were too expensive relative to productivity in a vacuum, but because their output value could no longer cover the sum of labor plus energy costs. This is where the structural failure becomes undeniable. The social market economy model depends on wage price rigidity being manageable through active labor market policies and flexible migration flows. It assumes that when demand drops, you can adjust wages or bring in more workers to fill gaps. But two forces are now converging to break this system simultaneously. First, energy costs remain structurally higher than they were for decades, permanently altering the profitability of traditional manufacturing processes. Second, Germany is facing a demographic cliff where the number of working-age people shrinks every single year faster than immigration can replace them. Immigration was always meant to be the safety valve that kept labor shortages from becoming structural bottlenecks. The assumption was that if domestic birth rates fell below replacement levels, foreign workers would simply step in and fill the voids without disrupting social cohesion or skill matching. That mechanism is now failing due to integration bottlenecks and severe skill mismatches. Even as firms announce hiring freezes, they cannot find qualified candidates for open positions because the available pool of skilled labor has fundamentally shrunk. The shortage is no longer a temporary gap that policy can easily fix. It is a hard demographic ceiling that immigration alone cannot overcome in the short to medium term. The result is what experts call a productivity trap within engineering and manufacturing sectors. The cost of energy combined with high wage demands now decouples from output value, making the traditional German model unsustainable without a complete restructuring of the economic base. Active labor market policies previously relied on flexible wage adjustments and migration flows to balance supply and demand dynamically. These mechanisms are now ineffective against the combined pressure of an aging population and energy-driven de-industrialization. Firms face a choice between shrinking their operations permanently or attempting radical transformations that require capital they do not have because margins have collapsed. This is why attributing the current situation solely to cyclical wage adjustments misses the point entirely. The data indicates that while the social market economy faces severe structural headwinds, the immediate labor market signal is one of wage compression and hour reduction across specific sectors, rather than a total cessation of hiring everywhere. But in energy-intensive industries where Germany built its wealth, the freeze represents the end of an era. You cannot simply lower wages to solve this problem because that would trigger social unrest and violate core tenets of the social market economy itself. Nor can you rely on cheaper energy returning soon enough to save existing business models. The real insight here is that we are witnessing a fundamental breakdown in how Germany balances labor supply with industrial demand. The system was designed for a world where cheap gas made high wages affordable and immigration could always fill gaps when birth rates dropped. That world no longer exists. Without addressing the energy cost structure or fundamentally rethinking its demographic strategy, the country faces years of stagnation where hiring freezes become permanent features rather than temporary corrections. This is not a recession that will end with interest rate cuts or fiscal stimulus. It is a structural realignment requiring changes to the very foundation of how German industry operates and competes globally. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.